Welcome to the Brooklyn Podcast with yours truly, Anthony Puccio, my co-host Colin Helwig, and we're joined with a special guest, Erik Slater of Clutch Points and Believe in Nets podcast. Erik, how you doing?
Doing well, man. I'm honored to be on the pod with you guys and ready to talk some Nets hoops. So excited to get into it.
Erik, Colin, the Nets, they've lost 12 of the last 13. I'd say that the tank is in full effect at this point. The rev of the tank is official. It's moving fast compared to where we were last time. The last time we shot an episode, Colin, they've lost 9 straight since then. They've lost 12 out of their last 13. They're 14-33. And they're 3 losses away from having the second worst record in the NBA. So safe to say, as we go into trade deadline season, this team, they're sellers, they're tanking. And I'm going to hop right into the rumor mill because why waste any time? Erik, Brian Windhorst recently, he reported that Ben Simmons might be a buyout candidate for the Cavaliers. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of wondering what's the point? What are the benefits? What are the pros and cons behind this? What do you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the Nets perspective, the benefit is simply continuing to tank and improving their tank because we've seen that while Ben Simmons still has his availability concerns, he still has his offensive limitations as a scorer and all those things. They're a better team when he's available, and you add D'Angelo Russell like they did. In that trade for Dorian Finney-Smith last month. And now when both of those guys are available, which granted has been very rare because the Nets have been seemingly intentional about making sure that isn't the case. When they're both available and you have both of them on the floor, which both of them at least one of them on the floor at all times, like it seems like they might tonight against Charlotte because both of them are active. They're a pretty competent team, relative to all these other teams that are in the tank race with them. So removing Ben from that equation, and now a lot of nights you only have D'Lo active, or even the nights that he's not active, you just don't have any ball handling out there like we've seen with them over this 2-15 stretch. They're going to be a lot worse, and they're going to lose a lot more games. So I think from the Nets end, that would be the incentive, and I think in a lot of cases, if this was a normal veteran, a guy who is, trying to be on a contending team and all that stuff, it would make sense from Simmons' end, but he's obviously a unique case. So we don't really know where things stand with him on there, but there's definitely a concrete benefit, in my opinion, from the Nets perspective to getting something like that done.
Oh,
yeah, I know. I think oftentimes people think, oh, why not just trade this guy? And I think the Cavaliers is interesting. I haven't watched them too much this year. I don't know how he would mesh in that system. Ben is I won't say he's a very odd player in how he mixes and matches with guys. So I'm not sure what would be the best spot for him. But I feel like when people say, oh, why would you buy them out? You don't trade him. I don't think Ben Simmons, has a good market. And we've seen for so long now, one of the Nets' main priority is to preserve their cap space. Now, and that's going to happen. They're going to have so much cap space because Ben Simmons is coming off the books. So even if you were to find someone to trade him, the odds are that you would be able to do that and not take back salary for X amount of years in the future. It's just kind of a perfect odd situation where the buyout does kind of make sense.
Yeah, I want to touch on a point that Erik made. Just elaborate on it a little bit from the Nets' perspective. This is somebody who, obviously it hasn't worked out quite the way that they thought it would, but they still remain very close with agents and players and doing the right thing by them. So if it is a Cleveland Cavaliers or one of these contending teams and that are interested in him, I could see them doing right by him, similar to what they did with Joe Johnson, how he wanted to compete. He was a little bit later in his career, but still doing the right thing by him. We know that Sean Marks and Ben Simmons' agent, Bernie Lee, have a very good relationship. And Bernie Lee is very quick to say how well Sean and the Nets organization treat Ben and other players. So I guess in the case of them keeping that reputation and keeping mending bridges in that sense, I can't see why it would hurt. You'll have a lot of people that say Ben helps the tank, and you'll have a lot of people say that he doesn't help the tank. So I don't know if it's beneficial or not. These days, guys, I don't really know what is beneficial or not, losing or winning.
I think at this point, I think it's very clear that Ben doesn't help the tank. I mean, they're it's not like astronomically, but they're definitely a better team, when he's on the floor. And, I guess that's somewhat of a compliment to Ben because he's, been better this year when he has been on the floor than prior, years. But I think it's really just he's so much better relative to these guys who are not NBA, caliber ball handlers whatsoever. Like, with all due respect to them, a lot of them are playing out of position. Like we have guys like Tyrese Martin and Tosan Woolman, like handling primary ball handler responsibilities. So when Ben's out there, he's going to be significantly better than those guys because he's still an elite passer and he does all those things. I think it's interesting from his perspective of buyout conversation because you say all these things do right by him and he'll get to go and play for a contender and potentially play in the playoffs. I know that's what every player should want. Is that what Ben wants? I mean, we haven't seen Ben play in the playoffs since, 3 years ago, and that we all know how that went. So I think it would be very interesting. Obviously, he would have to sacrifice a tiny bit of money, but he would probably make that back on whatever minimum contract he signs, and the Nets wouldn't mind, giving that money back, I think, to improve their tank if it's just a tiny amount. So it'll be interesting. And it also must be mentioned that because his salary is over the mid-level exception, he can't sign with any second apron teams. So that eliminates, a decent amount of contenders right there. Like the Cavaliers are not over the second apron, so they're, able to sign him. I think he would be somewhat of an interesting fit there because when you look at the Cavs and what they need, they have, two elite defensive big men in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And they have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, so they're small in the front. What they don't really have is that middle guy who can guard some of these primary ball handlers and wings. I don't think Ben is like an elite defender by any stretch of the imagination anymore like he was with the 76ers. But if you throw him in there and he can play like 15, 20 minutes a game, and maybe you can throw him at those guys and try to give them a little bit of trouble, and like that's all that he's doing is focusing on that and then maybe pushing the pace, like it could make some sense. I think it would be a really tough fit offensively, given they have two primary ball handlers like that. But like, there's a logic, and I don't think if they can add him for the minimum, like I definitely think that they would be interested in something like that.
Cleveland's really becoming a Brooklyn U right now. Brooklyn U.
Yeah,
it's working.
It's
working.
It's very much working. Good for them, honestly.
He clearly isn't, worthless or a lost hope if a team like Cleveland is interested in him too. For those that say that he helps the tank versus hurts it. So that's really all I got to say about that. Anything else you guys want to add on a potential Ben Simmons buyout?
I'm good. Good luck, Ben. Seriously, I mean that I say that half joking, but candidly, good luck. If this is it,
Yeah.
What a ride it's been.
Now, moving on to the February 6th trade deadline, we had a report from Ian Begley and even Yes Network's Frank Isola doubled down on this, saying that the Nets were interested in De'Aaron Fox. The national reporters like Sham say that he has a preferred destination, potentially San Antonio, but specifically with the Nets, on Begley's report, on Isola doubling down on that, I just want to get both of your guys' thoughts on this. Colin and I, we talk about whether this is a long rebuild, short rebuild. I would love to hear what you have to say, Erik and Colin, because this would indicate if they are interested that they don't want to drag this thing out too long.
Yeah, I would say, whether this is a long or a short rebuild, I'd say that I wrote an article about this today on Clutch Points, and I'd say that the Nets' interest in De'Aaron Fox really underscores the fact that this is whatever length of rebuild they want it to be. And they had that ability. And I think that that's a testament to, the position that Sean Marks and that front office has put this team in, because they're in a situation where they have their first round pick this year. They have their first round pick next year. If they want to tank like they're doing right now and try to get a really high pick and land those guys and build through the draft, they're able to do that. But they also have, 15 first round picks, most in the league, 12 tradable, also most in the league. And if a star becomes available, they can trade for him. They have league leading cap space. They can use that, either in the trade market or to sign players in free agency. So they have all these different avenues available to them, and they're not bound to any one. Like if you look at the NBA and the three ways that you can acquire players, it's the draft, trades, and free agency. And the Nets have very realistic paths to acquire high-end talent in all three of those. So that's my biggest takeaway from this De'Aaron Fox report. If you're going to talk about, is he a fit? Like, the Nets just need talent, so he's a fit if they're trying to get better. Right now at the trade deadline, I don't think it would make sense for them to give up assets, whatsoever at the trade deadline. If the Kings hold on to them and he's available in the offseason, depending on the price, I think you could visit it. But as Pooch just said, I think Shams reported today, like flat out, that the San Antonio is that team, that is his preferred destination. So if that's the case, it's a pretty hard sell to acquire him if he has his eye on somewhere else, because you see it with these players. Like when they have their eye and their intention set on a place, it's really, really hard to, take them off of that. And maybe Jordy Fernandez, who, engineered that 2022-23 Kings offense that was really elite, maybe him and the New York market could be enough to do that. But it seems like if San Antonio's his spot, which hats off to him as it is, because that's not like a place that players would want to go, but clearly he has a basketball incentive of playing next to Wemby and trying to win. So hats off to him. If that's the case, I think it would be really hard. If you're talking about trading assets for him and then trying to pitch him and convince him on re-signing, that's a dicey proposition. But to me, this underscores the Nets' optionality, their flexibility of the numerous directions that they can take this. And I think that that's a good thing, obviously, for this team moving forward, because more options is never a bad thing for a front office.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Eric. We've talked a lot about how they almost have an embarrassment of riches in terms of different paths they can take to get back to contention. But, like we said, the Nets have been losing a ton lately. I imagine a lot of people saw the news last night and they got excited because, losing's never fun. And I'll say this for the crowd of people that did get excited and are now disappointed that it seems like San Antonio, that's his spot. And like you said, if history tells us anything, these players usually get what they want. The reason it seems like he chooses San Antonio is because Victor Wembanyama was there. And now, how did that happen? The San Antonio Spurs, they were a good middle tier team with DeJounte Murray, and they sold and they tanked and they landed Wemby. And, Wemby's one of one. I'm not saying Cooper Flag is going to be Wemby. Definitely like lesser of a prospect. Wemby's probably the greatest prospect of all time. But let it be like a lesson where it's like, hey, the Nets are on the path right now where they can position themselves where maybe the De'Aaron Fox 2 years from now says, hey, I want to go to Cooper. I want to go play with Cooper Flag in Brooklyn. And why did that happen? Because they tanked and did the right thing in terms of a long rebuild and did not do what right now would be trading for De'Aaron Fox and selling house. So you got to be patient.
Yeah. Well, to you guys, I basically would echo both of your points. I think he just doesn't fit their timeline. Somebody that's going to be a free agent in 2026, where the Nets are right now and where they're headed, it wouldn't make any sense, at least in my eyes, for them to give up any assets right now while they're a 14-win team, and they're obviously tanking. We don't know what they're working with in the draft. If they're going to draft a point guard, if they're going to draft, we don't know what that personnel and makeup is going to look like after this 2025 draft. Like they're going to have 4 first-round picks, 2, 3, maybe even 4, which could be starting for them next year. So it really depends on their priorities. Eric, you hit the point. Colin, you doubled down. Flexibility and having that, like not having so much of a self-fulfilling prophecy for the future and just keeping your options open is an embarrassment of riches, as you say, Colin. So for me personally, it's good to see them interested. It's they can do their due diligence, which is great, but none of it makes sense right now. It just like, especially with him being a free agent. I could understand if he was on a long contract, but he's going to be a free agent in a season and a half. They could go right back after him in 2026 and not give up the assets.
Soto.
Oh,
I'm a Yankees fan. I'm allowed to joke about it.
Eric, are you a Mets or Yankees fan?
I am a Yankees fan. But I don't, it's not like the other sports where I have like a gripe against the Mets. In other sports, I really don't like the rivals or the teams in the other city. But I don't mind the Mets. I have a lot of friends that are Mets fans, and the Soto situation, obviously, it was tough. But the jury's out on kind of whether the Yankees are going to be able to replace him and different things that they can do. So, but a good parallel to the NBA. I'll give you credit for that. That was a good comparison.
Colin's got the analogies of a lifetime. You
need that for the pod.
Yeah, bro. He referred to Thanasis Antetokounmpo as the Johnny Chase of the NBA on
the I cannot take full credit for that. I saw that it was years ago. I saw that on Twitter, but that's spot on.
I hope you clip that one and post it on social. That's a winner right there.
It's out there.
Somebody was pissed. They said that Colin was insulting Johnny Chase.
True. He carried in Viking Quest.
Fellas, I'm moving on here. The Cam Johnson rumblings, they continue. Uh, we have to ask ourselves if he's played his last game as a Net. But the latest rumblings, and they've been coming from Jake Fisher. He says they are coming from Indiana. That Indiana's calling the Nets. Again, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. On a scale of 1 to 10, Erik, how confident are you that the Brooklyn Nets trade Cam Johnson by February 6th?
Right now, I put it like a 5, I guess. I would say that it's close to 50-50. I mean, the Kings are a team that was the team who a lot of people thought was going to have the most interest, but they're seemingly out of that now. It wouldn't make sense for them to give up assets for a move like that, with De'Aaron Fox's future looking extremely murky there. So it's tough to say. The teams that are reported to have interest, like, you talk about teams like the Pacers, like you said, the Grizzlies, the Cavs have been involved. There's a lot more teams that I think could make sense for the Nets. They just haven't been reported in that way. And the Nets are historically a tight-lipped team, like around the trade deadline. Like, they don't let a ton of info out. A lot of the info comes from other teams around the league. I have heard from people around the Nets organization, and I totally believe this, that they're comfortable holding him past the trade deadline. And the reason I say I believe that is because Sean Marks has definitely proven that he's comfortable holding on to players longer than what some fans or some other NBA people think would be advisable. And Cam Johnson has 2 years left on his contract. And, I think the pushback that you would get from a lot of fans, and you'll see it, I'm sure, if he comes back and plays more games for this team, is he's going to hurt the tank. And I think that that's a fair thought to have, because we've seen when he doesn't play, they're 0-11. When he does play, they're on like a 33 or 34 win pace, which is not going to get you top 3 lottery odds. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's more teams that aren't reported right now that come in, around the deadline and have some interest. So, I definitely don't think it's, off the table him getting traded. I just think that there are some things financially as well that make it a little bit difficult. Something that, I think everybody's heard that Cam has those unlikely bonuses in his contract, which means that teams that are matching apron conscious teams that are close to the aprons, have to get up to $27 million to match his money. But also, the Nets are only $700,000 below the luxury tax, which is something I haven't heard people talk about too much. And, he's only under contract for $22.5 million. So, not trying to make this too like math heavy, but if other teams have to account for $27 million, he's only under contract for $22 million. The Nets might have to take in more money than they send out in some of those. And they're only $700K below the luxury tax, which they're not going to pay. So, there's some financial things that make it difficult for some teams, but I do think that there's enough teams that could be interested that Nets could move him and get a decent return. But, things that I've heard from people throughout the NBA is that they're asking for multiple first-round picks, and they haven't budged on that stance yet. So it's really going to come down to closer to the deadline. Is that their hard price? Are they willing to budge on that? If they will, I think they could find a deal. If not, I think they'll circle back around to it in the offseason. And however that affects the tank, we'll hear from angry fans about that, I'm sure, in the ensuing months.
Yeah, no, I think it really does kind of feel like a coin flip at this point. And I think all you can do, and you hinted at this, Erik, you can look at the Nets past, and when they have guys who are there on expiring contracts, or in the case of Dorian Finney-Smith, player option, I assume I'll opt out, but guys where they could leave, the Nets don't play around. They get at least some return on that, and they trade the guys. Whereas Mikal Bridges, multiple years left on that contract, they waited until they got the Kings ransom offer. So unless that comes, I don't expect them to trade him. So I guess to put it on a scale, I would put it at a 4. But, like that, no one expected that deal for Mikal to come in as big as it was and when it did. And, who knows if the Memphis Grizzlies are going to come knocking and say, like, the Memphis Grizzlies, who reportedly offered 4 first-round picks for Mikal, which we thought was crazy 2 years ago. I mean, then the Knicks blew them out of the water, but that's neither here nor there. It'll be a fun next 12 hours, because I assume there'll be a lot of conflicting reports. It'll be interesting to kind of weed through it all. If they do trade him, and if it does go to Indiana, I mentioned this a couple days ago, I don't know if they'll be able to pry him, but Ben Shepherd was one of my favorite college players a couple years ago. He strikes me as such a Jordy Fernandez player. Erik, you're there. I think the two things Jordy talks about are getting a lot of threes up and ball pressure on defense. Dude is a great defender, always pressures up on the ball, off the ball. He doesn't take plays off, and he was 40% from three in college. That's very hard to do at the collegiate level. Shooting 40% this year, he just seems to check all the boxes. So if something does materialize, keep an eye out for that guy.
Look, Cam Johnson's only 28 years old. If you're Sean Marks and you want to fool yourself because people are saying he's going to hurt the tank, you could play him 10 minutes, 15 minutes a game in the second half of the season. You don't compensate. Getting less than what you can for somebody. Again, it's not like we're talking about a 32, 33-year-old. This is somebody that can be part of this going forward. But
Yeah, well,
all that aside, right? Go ahead, Erik.
I'd counter and say you don't sacrifice unless, well, depending on, what the difference in that value is going to be. If they think that they can get significantly more value during the offseason,
Okay.
You can do that. But if it's going to be, if we're talking about like second rounders or something like that, and there's not going to be that many more teams you think that are offering a significant more in the offseason, it would make sense to get off of him now. I mean, it's difficult to say because you look at the guys who the Nets have on the roster right now. Like we just talked about the Ben Simmons buyout possibility. If they're going into the second half of the season with Cam Thomas coming back from injury, D'Lo, Cam Johnson, Ben Simmons, like all four of those guys, and we're talking about a 30-game stretch, like 2 months, 3 months. It's going to be tough to keep those guys off the floor for extended periods, all of them. So I think that there's a world where it does hurt the tank if all those guys are coming back. I think they'll do their best to manage that. But, sometimes these things, the difference in some of these slots can come down to like a game or two. So I think there's a real way that it could hurt them. But I do think, like you said, if they think that they can squeeze another first-round pick out of it, there's definitely a debate and a push and pull there. I think the focus, in my opinion, should be maximizing this first-round pick, their own first-round pick, because that's the most premium asset that they have, and they just paid that markup with Houston to get that pick back. So that would be my focus. But if they think that there's a drastic difference in value that they can get this offseason, I could see, obviously, the rationale behind them holding on to him. Personally, I'm just skeptical that they're going to get a significant amount more in the offseason where it makes sense holding them through the second half of this tanking season, where they are trying to maximize their chances at a player like Cooper Flagg. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. But, either way that you're going to argue it, I think there's definitely an argument that can be made both ways. And, we don't know the market, what it's going to be this offseason. So there's no real right or wrong answer yet. It's all to be determined. So that's kind of how I'm viewing it.
Yeah, never underestimate how desperate teams are come February 6th when that clock is ticking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe they are a little bit quicker to offer that extra pick. Right now, a week out, we're hearing the words. We've been hearing it for the past month. But come February 6th, it's 1 o'clock, and it's, you're a championship aspiring team, then we'll be having a different conversation then.
For sure.
Until then, it's still only January 29th. So, Erik, Colin wants to play a game, and it's not, I know you guys spend a lot of time at Barclays Center, but he wants to play a game. Colin, I'll let you take over as the Jeopardy host.
You make it sound like I'm leading you guys into like a horror movie scene or something like that. No, I mean, this is our trade deadline special, and as we all know, the Nets have been very involved in the trade deadline in years past, bringing guys in, sending guys out. To keep it in the positive light, though, we're going to do coming guys in. So we'll do trade deadline acquisitions. We'll include buyouts that come after the trade deadline, but though we could do a little snake draft. We'll let Erik start. He's the guest, and we're going to draft starting fives of Brooklyn Nets trade deadline acquisitions. Full team history.
Full team history, Nets trade deadline acquisitions. I might have to break out an encyclopedia for that. If we're talking, all right, if I'm going first, I mean, does it have to be at the trade deadline, or can it be earlier in the first half of the season?
So the way, if you check in the chat, there's a word bank for you there. There's a couple a lot of names in there actually. The way I cut it off was if it is after January, then we're good. So anytime from January to mid-February, and then buyouts that come right after.
Okay. I was going to say from a basketball perspective, I was okay. Harden's in there. I
That's the closest one.
I forgot what month that trade happened. From a basketball perspective, obviously, I think he would be at the top of this list. Are we talking about like how good these guys when you acquired them, or them in like their primes?
Let's say when they acquired them.
Okay, all right.
You keep it net centric.
I mean, Harden's the obvious number one pick, I think, but I don't think I can do it just because of how his Nets tenure ended. So out of protest, I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to go a different way. And I think I'm going to go like the most fun starting five that I can think of, and a guy who I loved in his short Nets tenure was Blake Griffin. So obviously, he's not the best player on this list, but we're talking about grit and hustle. I'm going to take, elderly Blake Griffin. I think I'm going to take with my first pick. He was one of my faves.
That's a good one. It's definitely a fun one. Pooch, I'll let you go first. You've been moderating all day.
Draws. It's as simple as that. Draws.
There you go.
It's a good one. All right. I don't give a shit. I will take James Harden. He was awesome when he first came.
Shameless.
That Phoenix game was something else. It's funny how the whole thing was.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being the man. I need some help. Comes in. Katie was hurt. I believe Kyrie was still having personal issues. He was out. Just wills them to a win against a Phoenix Suns team that I think won 60 games that year. So
yeah, but if you're gonna take Harden, like you got to clarify in this: how many cities are you playing in, and how good are the strip clubs in those cities? If you're gonna, that's a factor, a variable that you can't overlook in this conversation.
I need someone to come out with like advanced metrics if they haven't already, and like look at his game in like different cities and try to triangulate like the highest rated clubs on Yelp.
Well, he's in LA now, and it seems like he's doing better than some people expected. So I'll give him credit for that. If it's back to me and I'm staying on my all-time fun starting five, I'm gonna go with Marcus Thornton, a guy who barely played for the Nets, but when he did, he was just getting buckets. So I'm gonna put him along Blake Griffin and let them kind of run that pick and roll, and we'll see what can happen with that.
It's a good one.
I like that. I like Eric's approach of the all fun Nets team.
I remember when he came in and he had that one game. I think it was against the Kings who traded him, and he was just cooking them. And he had like 30 something points, and I was like, my God, this guy's unbelievable. I was like really young, so I don't think I cared about defense and maybe some of that other stuff. But I was like, man, this guy's just frying dudes. It was awesome. So yeah, he was enjoyable.
I wonder. I don't know what happened to Marcus Thornton, but he was a thrill to watch. He was quick. They called him the microwave.
Yeah, he was a microwave.
Heat up quick. All right, my pick, my number 2 pick is going to be. I can't pick D. Will. Just can't do it. Maybe if we're in a UFC battle, maybe, but I'll go with the guy that D. Will wanted, Gerald Wallace.
Oof. A good player, but a consequential one.
That was one way to describe him.
Played his ass off, though. I'll get he played hard like every game. So, and he was fun to watch. Like I enjoyed watching him.
I feel like I'm gonna need some size.
And Pooch, Marcus Thornton is 37 years old. He's still playing basketball. He's playing for the Eberline Drive. Oh, it's in the basketball tournament, so it's not professional basketball.
Hey, he's playing for money.
Yeah, so he went to China to end his career. But yeah, shout out Marcus Thornton.
Marcus Thornton's gonna be like one of those 50-year-old guys that show up at the park and just like roast these kids. Like he's one of those dudes.
This is a guy I forgot to put on, but because he was right after Blake Griffin. We were talking about him the other night. I'll go with LaMarcus Aldridge.
Oh, yeah.
Harden, pick and pop game. Build around from there.
Back to me. There's a few good choices here. I'm going to go. Damn, if we're talking about basketball, I probably need some ball handling in my lineup, and some defense. So I'm going to go with Schroeder because, we get a little bit of defense and a little bit of ball handling next to Thornton and Blake, and we got some pick and roll ball handling. We got some point of attack defense, so I'm going to go with him.
All right. I need a big or a point guard, so Someone's got to get some rebounds. We go Andre Drummond.
There's a good point guard I forgot to put on here, who I just thought of.
Who is it? You're up.
I'm gonna give you guys. I'll give you guys one more round to see if you can think of them, because I'm gonna take. I need a defensive guy for sure. I'm gonna take Cam Johnson. Just cause.
Well, at least he got traded to somebody.
Is that back to me?
Yeah,
back to you, Eric.
Okay, who do I got? I got point guard.
We're 3 rounds deep, so 2 more.
Yeah,
For
I got Schroeder, Thornton, and Blake Griffin, which I don't think they're competing with your guys' squads, but they'll look good and they'll have some fun out there. I probably need a little bit more ball handling. I need a center. There's not a lot of center options on here. I guess I'll take DFS and I'm going to put him at like a small ball 5 maybe, or that's just going to be my front court. I'll go small and I'll try to have some more shooting with DFS and Blake out there. Not the best, group. I'll fully admit that, but I was going for vibes. So, that's where I'm at.
Go for the vibes. DFS. I'm going to answer you with Thad Young. Loved Thad Young when he was in that.
All right, so this is I'm double checking that this is right. Stephon Marbury was a trade deadline acquisition, correct?
I don't remember. I have to look it up.
It's a tough one.
Traded for Jason Kidd. Hold on.
Another guy that I wouldn't pick.
Yeah. I've got the fuck it. Are you good team?
He
says March 11th, 1999. Trade deadline had to have been pushed back then.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, Stephon, welcome to the team.
Okay. Who do we got left?
Still up is Mikhail Dinwiddie. Ben Simmons is available.
Oof.
Goran's not a bad pick. He played well on that.
Yeah, I already got a point guard. I need kind of a 3. So I guess I'll take Mikhail, because then I've got my 2 guards. I've got my 2 bigs. I've got Mikhail. We're definitely small, but we've got shooting at every position. So hey, it's something. We got some defense. Not the best 5, as I said. You guys are outclassing me as GMs.
So I got Draws, Gerald Wallace, Andre Drummond, and Thad Young. Need a point guard. All right, because I'm not picking D. Will, so I'm going Goran. I love Goran Dragic. I don't care how old he was. Yeah.
The post tenure comments didn't bother you, or you think that they were fair? They probably were fair.
I think they were fair.
Yeah.
I think he was justified with what he was saying, and he's been around the league long enough where I don't think he would just like speak out of line like that.
He came and he played hard. He played hard when he was here. It was it was tough. I don't think he said anything that was inaccurate. So
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Colin, you're on the clock.
I'm in dire need of some defense. If you look at my team right now, Marbury, Harden, LaMarcus. I wanted to whoever, I don't know which one of you guys got Andre. I would have liked to sneak him in, do a little Twin Towers thing with LaMarcus, but I think I can't believe I'm going to do this, but Ben Simmons. It's. I really wish I didn't say originally how he is right when we got to him, because maybe he just won't play. But
yeah,
Ben Simmons in theory, we'll stick him in there at the 4, and we will call it a day right there. So, anyone listening, anyone in the chat, let us know who you think drafted the best team.
So, who's everyone? What's your starting 5, everybody?
I have Schroeder, Marcus Thornton, Mikhail, DFS, and Blake Griffin, which, under the right circumstances, I think that group can perform.
It's the all vibes team, right?
Yeah, for sure. We some good vibes, some bad vibes. I was hamstrung on my final pick, so But yeah, there's definitely something there.
I'm half vibes, half good. We got Goran Dragic, Drazen Petrovic, Gerald Wallace, Thad Young, and Andre Drummond.
The bruising group.
Yep.
And my team is all over the place with James Harden, and I'm going to try to do this right. So Harden at the 1, Marbury at the 2, Cam Johnson at the 3, Ben Simmons at the 4, and mid-range LaMarcus Aldridge at the 5.
Nice.
Stretching arrows.
The starting 5 all-time Brooklyn Nets buyout / trade deadline.
I know a lot of people are going to be doing this draft. A lot of people have definitely done this
You should
exercise.
set something up on X or Bluesky or whatever you like to use, and have a little, or like those tier games that they do.
Pooch, you're sounding old, bro.
Oh man, I'm getting old. I'm gonna be 30 on February 6th. The trade deadline is gonna age me like 10 years. I'll be 40 before I turn 30. I appreciate that. It's Nets Daily's 21st birthday too on February 6th. It's only appropriate. So, fellas, Erik, thank you so much for coming on. Where can the good folks find you if they don't already have you?
Yeah, you guys can find all my work on clutchpoints.com. Podcasts are Believe in Nets on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can go to my YouTube channel at Erik Slater NBA, on Twitter at Erik Slater _. So constant news updates, analysis, everything there. So appreciate you guys for having me on. I've been a fan of the pod, the social clips, everything that you guys have been doing since you started it. So it was nice to come on with you and chop it up and talk some ball.
Erik, it was our pleasure. Keep hustling and keep doing what you're doing, because everybody's
good, guys.
watching and everyone's following. Thanks for
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Well, the dynamic duo is back. Erik with some great points.
Yeah. Thanks again, Erik. Appreciate you coming on, bro.
Yeah. A week before the trade deadline, Colin, we spent some quality time together at Barclays Center for the first time this year. I couldn't believe how happy you were to see me.
I didn't think you were gonna make it at first. There were a lot of people. A lot of people came in. The train screwed me that day. I had to. Yeah. I was running around the Fulton Center like a madman.
Meta had me till about 4:30. I just got there. I missed VC's press conference, but it was a really special night. It was good chopping it up with you for the time being that we did have. And I guess the worst part of the night was talking about the Giants.
Oh yeah, let's not do that. Let's not do that again.
Let's not go there. So, Colin, before we log off, we'll answer a couple of these mailbag questions.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Again, thanks to Erik. We wish we could have had him on here, but he had to hop off. Colin, we got the first question is from Chris Davidson. Colin, do you see D'Lo having a place on this Nets roster next season? And should the Nets, I think that means, should the Nets consider re-signing him on a fair deal? Or do you think this is just a standard stopgap for him?
I think it's just a standard stopgap. I talked about it last week. 2 weeks ago. There's only so many. You're trying to get picks back. You're trying to sell your expiring players. There's only so many guys that you can do that with where you're going to be able to match the salary and get something back. D'Angelo Russell was one of those guys. So I think he was purely here to match salaries of Finney Smith and Shake. And then the silver lining is, hey, in a tanking season, in a season the fans aren't going to be happy, here's a guy that fans will be happy to see out there at the very least. So I think that's all it is. I don't think he doesn't fit the timeline. And we've talked about it before. The Nets are going to potentially have 4 rookies on the team next year. Those are going to be the guys that should be the priority of the team, developing those guys, not trying to get D'Angelo Russell to like get a ring at the end of his career. Those are just like two totally different things. So right. I don't think it makes sense. Maybe like just a nice little gesture, like say like, hey, they'll say like, we'd love to have you back. But I think he knows the deal. I think the Nets know the deal. This is just a one-stop shop thing.
Yeah. And thanks to Chris for the question. I agree with you at the stopgap. D'Lo made comments recently saying, I'll never take for granted playing this freestyle of basketball ever again. So for him, I think that even he is grateful for just the opportunity to, let's make the most of this situation. We may not be winning games, but he's able to go out there, pad his stats, play his game, and earn his money in the offseason from another team. But I don't think that team is going to be Brooklyn. So, Colin, if you have anything to say about that. we can continue. But otherwise, Chris Davidson, thank you so much for the question. The illegitimate cousin of Pete Davidson. Neil Aces wants to know any chance that they bring up Long Island Nets, Drew Timmy or Killian Hayes, potentially on a two-way deal.
I don't think it's a priority right now. Like unless someone sees something from one of those guys, where it's like we really think we can turn this guy into something. Me personally, I don't know. I don't really feel that way about either of those guys. I don't know a whole lot about Drew Timmy, but I don't. Not thrilled with I shouldn't say that. That's pretty mean, but I don't want to dump on poor Killian Hayes here, who had a tough time in Detroit. But
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather those minutes go to like Reese Beekman, the other young guys on the team who I think I've seen a little bit more from in the past year and a half, or even month and a half if we're talking about Reese. But it'd be one of those things where maybe if the Nets buy out Ben Simmons, where it's like you're not taking anyone back and there's another roster spot, like why the hell not? So like I
Right.
wouldn't have a problem with it, but no, I don't really think it's a priority. I wouldn't be looking for that. What do you think, Pooch?
I agree with you. I don't think on a two-way deal, especially, I can't see it. Maybe something in game 79, game 80, game 81 and 82.
They
Like,
would have to convert. I mean, I think Tyrese Martin has played enough to kind of do what they did with Jalen Wilson last year, convert him. They would have to convert someone. They don't have any slots yet, so that would be part of the process too.
yeah. And Drew Timmy is playing good down there, and these guys, they deserve the credit. Like I said, maybe in some sort of circumstance late in the season. I feel like I've seen Sean Marks do this before, where like the last couple games he will bring up some guys from Long Island, but
Mhm.
as for a two-way contract, I just I don't see it. But again, like you said, maybe in the circumstance where Ben Simmons or somebody is bought out and they need to fill in a spot, yeah, why not develop one of these young guys and see what they could do on the NBA hardwood
Yeah.
again and again and again. So Neil Aces, we see you in the comments a lot. We want to shout you out. Thank you for that. If
Yeah.
Simon's
Thank you.
been here the whole time, Simon, it's good to see you in the live chat. We appreciate you and everybody else that's tuned in for a trade deadline special with Erik Slater. Colin, Anthony Roman is another big fan of the Brooklyn. Anthony Roman is a great guy. He's a big Nets fan. Shout out to Anthony. He's got a great name too. Anthony Roman wants to know, how long does he have to suffer?
For the rest of your
long does he
life.
have to,
Nah.
how long does he have to suffer?
Bro, probably definitely a little bit longer, to I'm gonna do a little shout out to Nets depicted by SpongeBob and bring a SpongeBob reference in here. So getting into the salty spittoon, that is just like the cream of the crop. That is where you want to be. That's being a contender in the NBA. Now, to get into the salty spittoon, you got to be pretty damn tough. And you got to grit through some not so fun seasons, some torturous seasons to get tough enough, i.e., get a Cooper Flag, a Dylan Harper, some stud out of the draft who's going to make your team good and make your team feel like it's time to bring in some veteran pieces now and build it out and do this thing. So yeah, you're probably you're gonna have to go through it a little bit longer. We're only halfway through the first season of a full on rebuild, but that's could be worse. You're in a better position than you were the game before that and the game before that. So just like whenever you count down to something, cross out those X's on the calendar. It's another day down being a tanking team, being a rebuilding team, but with each day you get a step closer to not being that. So you're just getting tougher in this process. It is what it is, and I won't say take solace in it, but understand that you're doing the right thing. You're doing what you got to do.
Tank Commanders, May
Yes, sir.
12th is one day closer every time you wake up. But Colin, it is, and we've said this. It's tough. Even if you're rooting for the tank, um, there's no way around it. You cover the games. I'm there watching, overlooking, and it's just VC night. If Simon, shout out to if Simon says that he was at the VC retirement game.
Nice.
I'm sorry I missed you there, Simon. I'll catch you at the next one that's worth watching. But respectfully, like even the VC night, like going there, that those 20 minutes, that 30 minutes that he was being honored really was a joy. But then reality hit really fast when that ceremony was over and they play the game again.
Mhm.
Like, I'm trying to find some sort of silver lining just in watching these guys, and it's damn near unwatchable, Colin. Like, I'm sure you know this, and it's not to be so tough. Like, watching more college basketball now, especially that my Johnnies are doing good over there.
Yeah,
Best in a
yeah.
long time. Best in a long time. But we'll call a spade, Colin. These guys are unwatchable, and that's what you predict out of a team that is as bad as they are, that are trying to lose.
Mhm.
Now, this podcast may drop after this game, but they're going up against a Hornets team that they're tied with in the standings for the fourth worst record in the NBA tonight. And I had put out a tweet saying, like, and this is not an indictment on the Nets. The Nets are playing this right. I mean, I wrote a whole column at the halfway point saying, Colin, they are exactly where they need to be. They're
Yeah.
doing everything that they need to do. And step one was finding the right head coach, which they've done.
Mhm.
If you could develop some guys along the way, great. But you're shedding salary, you're adding flexibility. They are exactly where they need to be, but it doesn't make being a fan or a reporter or anybody that has to sit through this enjoyable. And like I said, reality kicked us right in the ass, and we're right here. They're going to play the Charlotte Hornets tonight in a tank fest in North Carolina. We're a little bit barely halfway through the season, and it's not an indictment on the Nets. It's an indictment on the product that more than a third of the team right now is below of the league is below 500. Again, I'm not trying to be the get off my lawn guy, Colin. I know you called me old earlier, and I am getting old, but
I said
it
you
says a
sound
lot.
old.
Well, I certainly sound old, and I still got my hair, which there's that. But other than that, I am an old man. I started here when I was 18. All right,
Uh,
if you had to watch the Nets for 18 years, cover them every day, you're gonna get old too, real fast.
I
But
know, no.
the NBA product right now is it just makes it's upsetting for me that you go and you see these games like these. I'm writing the game threads and things like that, and it's like Tank Fest in Portland, Tank Fest in Charlotte. Like these two teams are deliberately trying to lose, and it's tough because it is at least a third of the league. So I would hope that the league can somehow find a solution to all this. As for Anthony Roman's question, when does this the suffering stop? I think May 12th. I think that the basketball gods owe the Nets something, and I
Ew,
don't
the
know.
Nets a whole lot.
Yeah,
If we're gonna open that messy book up.
yeah. If it's praying, if it's lighting sage, if it's I don't know, whatever it is that brings you luck and manifests good things, well, you better be doing it every day until May 12th, Anthony Roman. Thank you for the question. If Simon, we're going to answer your question. We appreciate you again for sticking around. It's been a long podcast, but a good one at that. If Simon wants to know, do you guys really believe Jalen Wilson is a piece? Simon says, "Eh."
I hate to just rip on a guy who's just going through a tough stretch right now, but I had this conversation with Lucas Kaplan, who does all the games with me, and there are so many players where when a team is rebuilding and the team is as bad as the Nets are right now, because you're just grabbing at straws for positives. There's so many players where you look at them and they kind of have a good one every 3-4 games, and you're like, this guy could be something, and then you just has to dawn on you that X amount of years are going to have to pass before they're going to be good again, and they're going to draft X amount of players in that process too. And it just becomes where the Jalen Wilsons of the world or of the organization, there's so many of them. You know what I mean? So I think the odds are unfortunately against him with where the team is at and how his production has unfortunately stalled. I'm not saying he couldn't be. I don't think anyone thought Joe Harris would have turned into the player that he did, and he was on the Nets when they were contending, almost won a championship. But from what I'm seeing right now, it doesn't feel like he's been. I haven't seen enough. You got to do a lot at this stage to make it seem like you're going to hang around. Cam Thomas has done a crazy amount. We don't know if he'll be hanging around when the Nets are going for a title again. So I think at this point, I haven't seen enough to the point where I'm confident that he will be there and he will be hanging around when they are winning in 2027, 28, whenever that may be.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like to rag on these guys. These guys trying to carve out a career in the league, but we're reporters. We got to call it how it is. No, I don't think that he's somebody that's going to be on this roster long term. last 3 games, he's shown up. He scored 15, 12, and 15. He's shown capability. I think earlier
Playing
in the
hard.
season, he plays hard. Earlier in the season, he was shooting the ball well, but you know, when I look at these types of players and in these types of games, I really think like you have got to make the most out of this opportunity. How many opportunities is someone like Jalen Wilson going to have like this before he's back in the G League, right? Where you're
Mhm,
playing 35 minutes per game on a team where it's a free offense and you're encouraged to shoot 15 threes a game. Like you've got to do everything it takes to somehow make a name for yourself.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
to answer it simply, no. But I don't like you said, Colin. I don't need to rag on a guy like that because he's obviously working his ass off and um, he's come a long way as it is. So all the best to him, and we'll see. Maybe he has a strong second half of the season. Simon, we appreciate the question, Colin. Before we log off, do you have any final thoughts on who should stay and who should go?
Uh, I guess don't be married. This is gonna make me sound like I'm telling everyone, "Hey, don't have like a single thought in your head," but like, don't be married to like any take that like any of these guys are. This is the player of the future, or this guy's a scrub, or this guy's a star. No, he's just gonna be like a six man somewhere. Like, there's so many unknowns right now with this team. The rotation is so fluid. There are different guys playing so many different minutes every night. Just kind of accept the chaos that is not like bad chaos, like that everyone knows what the team looks right now. But Jordy's got a plan. But nonetheless, everyone kind of knows that like the team doesn't have like they're not necessarily going for wins. Sean Marks made that comment about strategic planning or whatever. Just be fluid with your opinions of these players. And I guess if you're someone who likes to fight with people on Twitter, be fluid with your takes because there's nobody knows anything. There's no set in stone player that is going to be the future of the franchise. There's no even set in stone plan for how they're going to rebuild. So I guess just keep floating on. Don't get
Yeah,
too wound up about anything.
yeah. And I think that can be applied to also, and I've been very, very tough on him, Nick Claxton. Like
Mhm.
the same way that you're saying, don't deem anyone the franchise player or anything like that. Like Clax hasn't had the best year. He's coming off a contract year. Everybody's writing him off. We did the same thing with Cam Johnson last year, and look at where he is this year. So Claxton, he's still young. I'm sure he's hungry. He knows that he's got to be better, and I firmly believe that Sean and this organization wants him around, despite Jordy's style of play. So just to your note, like you make a good point. Like there's nothing set in stone with any of these guys going forward. But for Nick Claxton, he's had a really disappointing season. Uh, but he could bounce back. He's still young and he's still a very, very, very talented player. So see what
Yeah.
happens. On that note, I would like to know what the heck is going on with Boyan Bogdanovic. Like really, what is happening with Bogey?
Dude, it's
I
so
like
weird that
Bogey.
like we like forget like when we talk about buyout candidates, like you forget that he's there. 'Cause the team like
Right,
doesn't provide updates on him, and we ask, and it's just like, oh, he's doing off court work, and that's like all we'll get.
right, right. And that's how it's going to be. That's just how Sean Marks operates things, and especially when it comes to injuries. I'll throw in one last note, and it's not to like beat a dead horse, but you know what, Colin? I really actually would love if the Nets bought out Ben Simmons, and that's only just so like we can just get rid of this discourse coming on this podcast and like talking about him. Like it's not like I hate man or dislike him. It's just like I feel like my dad used to always say like never overstay your welcome or else you'll never be welcome to stay again. Like it kind of just feels like that type of situation for both sides. Like people saying that he helps Tank, that he hurts Tank, whatever it is. Like it's been kind of damaged goods since he got here, and I think that if they get rid of him and he could be serviceable elsewhere where he'll be appreciated and not have so much pressure to shoot the ball and things like that, less under a microscope, uh, God bless him. That would be good for his career and probably best for the Nets to just move on from Ben Simmons as a whole. But it doesn't really change my perspective on this organization, whether he's here through the season or not. I just think for the fan base's sake. Like, it would just be good to move on and have a fresh start. But that'll be in the coming month or after the season, irregardless. So that's really what I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, I remember talking with some guys last year, and I was like, the headache that it is to cover, like, oh, is he hurt? Is he not hurt? Is he back? Is he back to Philly Ben Simmons? Just going around in circles. And it felt like just to alleviate everyone and maybe even him, it would make sense to buy him out. But it was always like, no, like you have him on for another year, like maximize value. I don't care how much, like how annoying it may be. Like that's still like something there. You have to get value. But now we're halfway through his last season. He's gone at the end of this year anyway. So I wouldn't have a qualm with it anymore. It's not like you're going to get anything back for him. It's just you're getting to the finish line a little bit closer.
Yep. I'm right with you. Any last thoughts there, Colin?
No, man, I'm all set. Let's I don't know what I'm gonna say. Let's not beat the Hornets tonight because that's still sacrilegious in the eyes of many fans. But let's keep an eye on those lottery odds, even as the losses stack. That's something you can look at and say, hey, there's a avenue to profitability here in the future. So
Yep.
let's do it. Keep locking in Nets fans. Keep staying tough. You can do this.
3 losses and they're looking at a bottom 2 spot in the NBA. Obviously, we'll find that out in the coming weeks. Colin, we got the trade deadline in 1 week. It's Nets Daily's 21st birthday on February 6th, which is also subsequently Anthony Puccio's 30th birthday. It's going to be a special day on Feb 6th, so make sure you wish at Nets Daily, not Net Income, Nets Daily, a happy birthday over there. And
you.
We'll save that. 30. Colin, I started with Nets Daily at 18 years old. 12 years covering this team. I've seen 3 playoff wins, 3 playoff series wins in 12 years.
You're not getting any this year.
No. The crazy thing is I still have my hair.
Damn right you do.
That's it. So, folks, you can follow us at The Brooklyn Pod on X, Instagram, TikTok, and you can email us any of your questions, concerns, comments, whatever it might be at thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. So when we're back, the Nets might or might not have made some trades, might not have bought out some players. But until then, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
See you guys on the other side.